Today on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat, Wildfire Marine continues the transformation on the 23-foot Seacraft project.
We're ready to go ahead and mount the cap on this boat, and it'll make a big difference. We're going to go from a bare hull to an almost finished boat in one step, so we're looking forward to that.
George LaBonte joins Dreamboat owner Norm Bekoff aboard his classic 1978 28-foot Ricky Scarborough.
Norm finally made his dream come true of having his own charter boat and being able to run it, and the fact that it is that Carolina boat that he always dreamed of from back in his youth.
And Two Rivers Boatworks adds a custom touch on the engines for the 27 Stuart Boatworks build.
I'm sure that Sterling and his crew will do a great job, and these motors are going to look fantastic.
All coming up on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us as we follow one-off builds to all-out restorations in Stuart, Florida's Dreamboat District, home to some of the best custom boat builders in the world. From modest to over-the-top, industry experts from the district's premier facilities show how it's done. Fiberglass repair, custom paintwork, engine rigging, electronics installations, and more. And boating editor George LaBonte shares the stories of boaters who have already turned their dreams into reality. This is Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat.
Here at Wildfire, we're working on Corey Fountain's 23-foot Seacraft restoration. Right now we're getting ready to lay up a 23 deck mold. It's a center console mold. This boat previously was a cuddy cabin model, and he went ahead and found that boat, and so we cut the cuddy cabin off, and now we're laying up this center console mold for him. The first thing we did was spray our primer into the mold after it was prepped, and now we're going to go ahead and put all our glass in. We pre-cut all our glass and lay it all up on panels right next to the mold, so that everything is set in order the way that's going to be placed down into the mold. We go ahead and wet it out, put our first layers of small pieces that take up the corners and the straight edges on it, so we make sure we get a good bond in the corners. Then we go ahead and start laying up our full pieces. We do a couple layers of 1.5 ounce matte, followed by biaxial fiberglass, and then we put our core in while it's still wet. On the coring, we stop our cores a little bit short of both the sides and any hatch openings we have. And the reason we do that is so we can tie the inside layers of fiberglass to the outer layers of glass. So we start at one corner and just work our way all the way around. And once we're done with everything, we just let it set for a day, and then we'll go back in and do our final glass on the inside of the core. After we let that deck set up for about a week, then we go ahead and pop it out of the mold. We just raised it up a few inches, and while it's sitting in the mold, we went ahead and gel coat the inside white for good reflection. And then Debbie goes ahead and wires all the undergunnel lights and any pre-wiring that she needs to do while it's upside down. It's a lot easier to get to than laying on your back on the deck trying to install all these items. We get them all while you can work, relatively comfortable. To wire that, Debbie goes ahead and uses a pacer wire, which is a real good high quality. It's a tinned copper wire. It's something you want to last for a long time because it's very difficult to get to some of these wires later on. So you want to do it once and forget about it. And with that type of wire, we don't have to worry about it having any callbacks. There's no corrosion. Where it's mounted and the way it's mounted. So it makes for a lot easier installation for us. And it's also better for the customer. It's something he's never going to have to worry about unless a light happens to burn out somewhere way down the line. But to take care of that, Debbie leaves a service loop. What we call a service loop is just an extra 6 or 8 inches of wire that she loops around next to the wire or next to the light, so that if it does have to be replaced, there's plenty of wire for the person to work with to go ahead and put a new one back in there. As we were hoping, the bracket showed up the day before we were getting ready to put the cap on, which worked out perfect because installing the bracket with the cap off would be a lot easier for us, simply for access for the person working on the inside of the boat. And in this case, it actually worked out really well to our advantage because of the fact that this bracket was changed from an original single engine bracket to a twin. The reinforcing shelf that we had put in for the single engine bracket, we put it in so that the mounting bolts are 2 inches below that shelf, which gives it a really strong holding power for the bracket. And what happened when we went to the twin engine bracket, now that the mounting bolts are above it, unfortunately they were only above it by about 1 inch. And so we ended up having to trim all the washers that were on the top side of the bracket. And luckily we didn't have the deck already on, because to try to do that through the 2 access doors in the back, it would have been quite a chore. It would have added hours to the job and a lot of misery to Debbie, who happened to be on the inside. Now that the bracket's installed, we're ready to go ahead and mount the cap on this boat, and it'll make a big difference. We're going to go from a bare hull to an almost finished boat in one step, so we're looking forward to that.
When we return, FS Boating editor George LaBonte joins Dreamboat owner Norm Bekoff aboard his classic 1977 28-foot Ricky Scarborough in this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment. This segment brought to you by Birdsall Marine Design. Quality marine accessories built to stand the test of time.
Birdsall Marine Design has been a leader in aftermarket and custom boating accessories for over 35 years. Based in West Palm Beach, our facility specializes in the manufacturing of custom T-tops, leaning posts, consoles, rod holders, marine canvas and upholstery products, and a wide variety of anodized aluminum hardware. Come visit our spacious West Palm Beach facility anytime, or visit us on the web at birdsallmarine.com to learn more about our most innovative products.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us for this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment with Florida Sportsman Boating editor George LaBonte, as we feature anglers who have already launched their dream. Florida Sportsman began these features 30 years ago, and the dreams just keep getting better.
Today we go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and meet up with Norm Bekoff and have a look at his 1977 28-foot Ricky Scarborough. Now, Norm's earliest experiences in boating were with his father, first in Massachusetts and then down here in South Florida. Norm's dad actually owned a Ricky Scarborough back in the 80s and another Carolina custom boat, and it was back then that Norm really first found his fondness for the Carolina custom boats. In fact, at that time, Norm said to himself, one day I would love to own one of these boats.
I grew up on sport fish boats since I'm a little kid, since I'm 10 years old. And I feel truly blessed for that, because Dad had all those boats for so many years, and worked on private boats, worked on charter boats, been in the passenger vessel business for over 30 years. And I keep coming back to the one thing I love, and that's taking people fishing for a living. And there's just no better boat on the planet, no better designed boat on the planet than a Carolina boat.
Norm finally found this 28-foot Ricky Scarborough boat that was actually a charter boat in the Keys. And like a lot of charter boats, this boat had some time on it and a lot of work needed to be done to it to get it where he needed it. So he made a deal, took the boat back up to Fort Lauderdale, and the job began. He started making the boat he needed to run charters on.
This boat was definitely not Dreamboat quality when I bought it. It was a charter boat, and it was the paint was shot. It overheated on nearly every trip. I had to run it pulled back, and it was about a 2-year process to bring this boat back to the condition that I wanted it in. And the first phase of that was to get it to run right. We had to go through the cooling system. We replaced just about everything on the cooling system, on the freshwater, the saltwater side, all the pumps. We went through, redid a lot of the wiring on the boat, put in a new autopilot, new GPS, just did a bunch of work like that, installed some indirect lighting for when we're running at night, new fusion stereo system, new speakers, just did a bunch of electrical work in the boat to bring it back. And we spent most of 2017 doing that, and then in 2018 we concentrated on the on the paint. We redid the paint. We painted the boat, did the bottom paint, did the top sides, did the hull, stripped the transom, revarnished the transom and the tow rail, and there were a lot of guys that were charter fishermen friends of mine that kept asking me, well, what are you going to do with the tow rail? And they said, you need to paint that. If you're a charter boat and you're anchoring all the time, you need to just paint that. And at the end of the day, it's still a Carolina boat, and it's got a lot of heritage and history behind it, and I just couldn't bring myself to painting that tow rail. And so we stripped it down and varnished it. So that's how I live now.
Norm finally got the boat exactly where he wanted it, and moved the boat up to Fort Lauderdale where it's a charter boat right now.
I needed something that was going to be economical to run and that I could fish it myself with my customers. I thought that was probably the best way for me to get into chartering full time. This boat just fits that bill perfectly.
Following the example set by his father many years back, decades ago, with that early Carolina boat that he fished on, Norm followed his dream full circle and was actually able to build and complete and make a business out of his own personal Carolina boat, seeing his project Dreamboat come to fruition. And fortunately for him, his dad was there to see it happen.
One of the last things that I remember him saying to me was, let's get out of this hospital so you can take me fishing on that newly painted boat. So yeah, he got to see it. And that was pretty special.
Well, after a few decades of dreaming about it, Norm finally made his dream come true of having his own charter boat and being able to run it, and the fact that it is that Carolina boat that he always dreamed of from back in his youth.
My owning this boat is really the culmination of all my experience in sport fishing, from the time I was a young kid to when I was growing up in high school and working on these boats in college. I just always wanted a Carolina boat. This boat came along at the perfect time, and it fits the bill for everything that I'm looking to do with a boat. And I'm just, 30 years later, I finally have a Carolina boat of my own.
After an initial investment of $39,000 and spending $30,000 on repairs and custom modifications, the cost of Norm's Dreamboat comes to a total of $69,000. When we return, the experts at Two Rivers Boatworks give a set of brand new outboards for the 27 Stuart Boatworks build a custom paint job. This segment brought to you by Two Rivers Boatworks. Exceptional design, quality, and craftsmanship.
Dreaming of transforming your boat into the envy of the fleet? The experts at Two Rivers Boatworks are dedicated to customizing your boat to your specific needs and personality. Specializing in fiberglass and composites repair, professional painting, systems installation, and more. Founded by boating enthusiasts, we understand the enjoyment of being on the water, offering exceptional design, craftsmanship, and quality, so you can spend more time on the water than dreaming about it. Visit our facility in Stuart, Florida, and turn your boating dreams into reality.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat. Join us as the experts at Two Rivers Boatworks adds custom color to the new outboards for the 27-foot Stuart Boatworks build.
At Two Rivers Boatworks, we've been doing a boat for Stuart Boatworks, our next door neighbors. We got the boat in a bit of a custom paint job. My guys have done a ton of work painting the hull, painting the inside of the boat. The boat has gone back next door for rigging, and while they've been rigging the boat, we've been finalizing the final paint job on the outboard motors. The owner of the boat wanted them painted satin black, which I think would have looked really, really neat. But once we had painted the motors, they just didn't meet our expectation. And so we've decided to go back and have the motors painted to match the hull color. So the motors are over in paint at the moment, and I'm sure that Sterling and his crew will do a great job, and these motors are going to look fantastic.
All right, so here at Two Rivers, we were given the 27 Stuart Boatworks motors to paint, and originally we went ahead and painted them the satin black. They came out beautiful, and the only problem was when we matched the satin up to the aluminum tower, it wasn't a perfect match, so the owner decided to go ahead and reshoot them. We shot them the stone gray, which is the color of the hull. And when you're painting motors, let me just start by telling you they're super, super intricate. There's a lot of crazy details, mainly up in the trim and tilt section of the motor and just under the main cowling there. There's hundreds of little details to tape off, and it's quite the journey, but I think in the end it's totally worth it. So when spraying the SE on the motors, it's a very different process on the hull. You have a lot more surface area, and you can turn your volume and your pressure up, and that's what you need with SE and majority of your metallics. So with the motors, it was more of turning the air down and turning the volume down. And like I said, there's a lot of detail, so you really had to get up under there and just kind of shoot and coat until you see good coverage, and then you pull back a little bit, turn your fan up, and just kind of fog that in. The main thing you want to do when you're spraying the parts with the SE, you always want to go to those burn-through areas and tack those off first. It just kind of brings everything together, and that's really what you want before you can lay down your final 2 coats. So you'll tack those areas off, give it 15 minutes, come back, do a full coat on that, and if you have great coverage, you'll wait another 30 and come back behind that with another wet coat, and that usually finishes off the base coat for SE. So everything's said and done with the finished stone gray SE on the cowlings. I'm just very happy with the finished product. I think even though it was a bummer to have to reshoot all of the engines, it's just totally worth it. The product just looks superior, and I just can't wait to see it all come together on the boat. We put a lot of hard work into this paint work and trying to make sure it just comes out perfect. I want the boat to really stand out, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing it run out in the ocean.
Sterling and his crew did a fantastic job painting these motors in the hull color. They look fantastic, they're glossy, they look like they're almost wet. We're finishing up the Stuart Boatworks project now with the boat going back and them putting everything together. We have a few projects in our shop still that need to be completed. We have a beautiful Deep Impact 39 that we're waiting for the glass to arrive, and 1 or 2 electronic bits and pieces so that we can tie this project up and get it out of here. The CV is also coming along nicely. The guys have been working really, really hard on it. They've got all the little nicks, chips, scratches, small holes in that done on the hull. And the guys have done a lot of work on the leaning post and on the console to get the boat done. It's just a matter of getting the boat in primer now and moving along.
When we come back, the team at Wildfire Marine brings the 23-foot Seacraft project closer to completion. This segment brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly.
When you're in command of a boat with Mercury 400 horsepower Verados, you might start to feel like you're someone that fish should fear, that the water should respect, and that the world should acknowledge. Until you realize you are all those things. The new Mercury 400 horsepower Verado. Power, control, and speed in a lightweight package.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat. Join us as the team at Wildfire Marine brings the 23-foot Seacraft project closer to its new life as a center console.
Today we're getting ready to put the cap on Corey's 23-foot Seacraft, and we had kind of a little bit of surprise. We got the cap all ready to put on the boat. We had it in the slings, and a guy showed up with a ski pole that Corey had ordered. We had talked about it months ago, but I had no idea what it looked like or how it mounted or anything. I went ahead and opened the package and looked at it, and we had to make an immediate change to our plans because this wasn't going to be a quick installation on a ski pole. We were going to have to get this done before we go ahead and put the cap on, otherwise we were going to be in a world of hurt. We went ahead and started to mock it up on the boat, and the first thing we found out was the spacer that they sent with it, which is cut at the transom angle so the bolts can go straight through the transom to hold this piece. The transom angle was wrong, and also the mounting piece was a little bit too thin. There wouldn't have been enough room for the rub rail to fit behind the ski pole. So we had to go ahead and redo the piece. So what we did is took the existing one, set it on the transom and put a square to the transom, and then went ahead and marked that so we could cut a new piece. The reason we had to do that was it's such a large threaded stainless steel pole that if the nut that it mounts to isn't perfectly square to the top, there's no way they'd be able to thread that piece in and out. So we had to go ahead and make sure we had a good enough standoff. And then our next big problem was there's a welded nut on the bottom of the plate, which unfortunately when we switched to a twin engine bracket, Armstrong puts a 1/4 inch aluminum bulkhead right in the center of the bracket. which was dead underneath the middle of where that nut had to go. So what we had to do was set up the nut in place with the pole so that we had it perfectly square. Then we had to mark that and drill a pilot hole. And unfortunately, my pilot hole had to go dead center in that 1/4-inch piece of aluminum. Once we got that hole drilled, then we had to cut the bottom out to fit the nut. And of course, all that had to be done blind through one of the mounting holes. So it did take quite a bit longer than we expected. Once we had everything in place, then we just went ahead and put our 5200 sealant on it and ran our 3 bolts through the top piece. We only tightened the center one so that we could mount the pole in and also mount the base in case we had to do any little bit of tweaking on that bracket, because if they don't perfectly align, there's no way you thread that piece in. Once we put the pole in place, then we went ahead and torqued the 2 outside ones, and then we just went ahead and finished torquing the ones on the bottom, and that's it. I mean, it's a pretty stout piece. It's a really nice piece. It just took quite a bit longer installation than we expected. It's not something that you would mail order and then expect to put on your boat on a Saturday afternoon without any incident. It's going to be a long, drawn out. There's going to be some figuring if you decide to do one of those. Now that we have that ski pole installed, we can go ahead and do the deck. It's very difficult for these things to fit perfect because you're working with on an outside finish on the mold for the deck, and you're working with an outside finish on the hull. And if you lay the deck up really thin, it would drop on like a shoebox lid. It'd fit in there perfect. If you lay it up too thick, it won't fit at all. So you're kind of in a place where you lay up the thickness that you want to lay up, but there's going to be some times where you're going to have to trim it a little bit just to make it fit on there snug. We built our deck mold with completely blank, with no openings in it, because some people have different ideas of what they want to have. And in this case, most of the boats we've done have a single live well in the center, but Corey wanted 2 separate ones. So we basically, with our starboard pieces, we laid up 2 separate hatches that we simply 2-sided taped to the deck mold. And then the same thing with the anchor locker in the front. Once we flipped the deck over, we went ahead and pulled those pieces out. And it's a simple matter. Just, we put a screw in the back of the piece of starboard, yank it out of the hull. And then the mold release is simply water soluble. We wash that. And to make our radiuses around the pieces of starboard we use a modeling clay. And then that simply has to be wiped off clean. And we have a pretty good surface that once we hit it with our 320, it'll look like it came out of the mold that was built for that specific installation. Now that the cap's on them, it's a huge difference when you step up inside the boat. You went from a bare hull to suddenly it looks like a almost finished boat. So we're in good shape now.
Next week on the season finale of Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat, Two Rivers Boatworks freshens up a boat of their own, a very customized Intrepid. George LaBonte revisits some of his favorite one-man dreamboats from the season. And Stuart Boatworks puts the finishing touches on their very custom 27.